The email lands just after midnight, a single-line subject. Indictment filed. My blood goes cold, but my hands are steady.
They always are now.
I click it open. The legal filing isn't just official, it's devastating. Not for me. For her.
For them.
The document names her, the mistress specifically, accused of a laundry list of medical fraud charges linked directly to the clinic where she got everything. The clinic my husband's money paid for. I lean back in the chair, the cheap plastic digging into my shoulder blades. The screen glows, illuminating the grim reality of what I've done. Not just uncovered, but orchestrated. My husband is sleeping upstairs, oblivious. He thinks he's safe. He thinks he got away with it. He thinks I'm the same woman he lied to for years. He has no idea the storm I've become. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. It started, as these things often do, quietly, insidiously. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. A shared history, woven into the threadbare couch, the chipped mugs, the comfortable silence we'd perfected over a decade and a half.
Mark was.
Mark. Stable. Predictable. A creature of habit. Early to rise, black coffee, buried in spreadsheets before the sun was even a rumor. He worked hard. I worked hard too, though my world was quieter, spent mostly within the four walls of our home, managing the unseen architecture of a shared life, occasionally picking up freelance design projects that paid the bills but didn't stir the soul. We had routines. Friday night pizza, Sunday morning walks, the rhythmic lullaby of his breathing beside me in the dark. It wasn't the fiery passion of movies, but it was a deep, quiet well of connection I believed was unshakable. It felt safe. It felt permanent. I remember the first time the safety flickered. A credit card statement arrived. Not our usual one. An old account, one we rarely used, tied to a line of credit we kept for emergencies, tucked away, almost forgotten. The balance was significant. Not astronomical, but enough to make my eyebrows rise. And the charges, they were odd. Multiple large sums. Not from places we shopped. Not for things we needed. The names were unfamiliar.
A spa?
Several transactions for a place I'd never heard of, miles away, in a different city. Then a few payments to a medical facility. An aesthetic clinic. My heart did a little jump, a nervous flutter I immediately dismissed. Maybe he was planning a surprise for me? A spa weekend? Maybe a joint procedure, though he always joked about aging gracefully. The thought, while unlikely for Mark, was comforting. I set the statement aside, planning to ask him later, perhaps tease him about his sudden interest in pampering. But later never felt like the right time. He was busy, stressed with work. He'd brush off my casual questions, his eyes darting away just a fraction too quickly. Oh, that old card? Must be something I forgot about. Business expense, probably business expense. The words felt hollow. Business expenses went on the corporate card. Our personal finances were meticulously separate from his work life. The flicker became a persistent hum of unease. I started paying closer attention. Phone records. He'd always been open with his phone, leaving it face up on the counter. Now it was always tucked away, screen down. He'd step out of the room to take calls. Late nights at the office became more frequent, the explanations vaguer. The comfortable silence between us started to feel less like peace and more like distance. An ocean was growing, currents I couldn't understand, pulling us apart. I tried to talk to him, really talk. To bridge the gap I felt widening. Mark, is everything okay? You seem distant. He'd plaster on a smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. Everything's fine, just tired. Lots going on at work. Always work. It was his shield, his excuse, his impenetrable fortress. My attempts felt clumsy, desperate. I was grasping in the dark, reaching for the man I knew, but finding only a ghost. The unease curdled into suspicion. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the lies, the careful avoidance, the way his body tensed when I came into the room unexpectedly. He was hiding something. and the weight of that secret was crushing the air out of our life. The first real crack appeared not with a bang, but with a whisper. I was doing laundry, his jacket slung over a chair. My hand slipped into a pocket, pulling out a crumpled receipt. Not for dinner, or gas, or anything mundane. It was from a jeweler. A significant purchase. Not the kind of thing you'd buy for your wife on a random Tuesday. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. A necklace. Custom made. My stomach clenched. It wasn't for me. I knew it instantly, with the cold, sickening certainty of a fatal diagnosis. I didn't confront him. Not yet. The receipt felt like a tiny key, unlocking a door I wasn't ready to open. I tucked it away, alongside the credit card statement, building a silent, terrible dossier in the back of my mind. The fear was a constant companion now. It sat on my chest, a heavy weight making it hard to breathe. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Was I paranoid? Was I inventing this distance, these lies? I'd watch him across the dinner table, searching his face for any sign of the man I married. Sometimes I'd see glimpses, a familiar tilt of his head, the way he'd chew his lip when he was thinking, and I'd cling to those moments, telling myself I was wrong, that everything was okay. But then the mask would slip, the carefully constructed facade of normalcy would crack, and I'd see the stranger looking out from behind his eyes. Someone who lived a life I didn't know. Someone who was betraying me. The urge to know became an obsession. Sleep offered no escape. My dreams were filled with shadowy figures and whispers I couldn't quite decipher. During the day, I moved through my routines like an automaton, my mind replaying every interaction, searching for clues I'd missed. The internet became my confessor, my co-conspirator. I Googled the spa, the clinic, the address on the jewelry receipt. The clinic's website was glossy, filled with photos of impossibly smooth skin and perfect noses. Procedures I'd never considered, never wanted. Liposuction, facelifts, rhinoplasty, fillers. A whole menu of transformation. A different kind of transformation than the one happening in my marriage. I started checking his computer history when he was out. It felt invasive, a violation of the trust one still desperately wanted to believe in. But the need to know outweighed the guilt. His browser history was meticulously cleared. Almost. He wasn't a tech whiz. A few cookies remained, breadcrumbs leading to dating sites, private forums, burner email accounts. My hand shook so hard I could barely type. The names, the pseudonyms, the coded messages, it was like reading a foreign language, the language of deceit. And then I found her. A profile picture. A woman I'd never seen. Younger. Striking. And the messages, they were undeniable. Pet names, plans for clandestine meetings, declarations of a love that felt like a physical blow. And mentions of our little project, the final touches, making you perfect the clinic. The surgeries. It all clicked into place with a sickening finality. The money on the credit card, the strange spa visits, the jewelry, it wasn't for me. It was for her. To reshape her, refine her, make her into his ideal. He was investing in his affair, pouring our shared resources into building his new life, piece by painful piece, right under my nose. The discovery didn't bring clarity. It brought chaos. A maelstrom of anger, hurt, and a shame so deep it felt like it would consume me. How could he? How could I have been so blind? I wanted to scream, to smash things, to confront him with the evidence, and watch his carefully constructed world crumble. But something stopped me. A cold, quiet voice in the back of my mind. What would that achieve? A messy divorce? A division of assets? He'd walk away, maybe feeling a fleeting pang of guilt, but ultimately free to continue his life with her, having only lost money. He needed to lose more than money. He needed to lose everything. I stopped sleeping entirely. My days were a blur of work, pretending, and digging. The initial shock gave way to a simmering rage, a cold, calculated determination. He wanted to live a secret life? Fine. I'd learn its rules. I'd become a ghost in my own home, observing him, listening, gathering intelligence. I learned his new routines, the lies he told to cover his tracks. I memorized her name, her social media profiles, her public life. She was an aspiring influencer, curating a perfect online persona. Her posts were filled with photos showcasing her natural beauty, promoting healthy living, yoga, self-love. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. Every flawless selfie, every glowing caption felt like a personal insult, a celebration of the deception he was funding. The cosmetic surgeries weren't just a single event. They were a process, a series of appointments, procedures, follow-ups. Each one paid for with money that was rightfully half mine. He wasn't just having an affair. He was systematically depleting our future to sculpt his mistress into his fantasy. The scale of his financial commitment became clearer the deeper I dug. It wasn't just a few $1,000s. It was tens of thousands, maybe more, hidden in plain sight through convoluted transfers, shell accounts, payments made to third parties who then paid the clinic. He was meticulous in his deceit. But he wasn't perfect. My freelance design background had given me a knack for detail, for spotting patterns and inconsistencies. I applied those skills now, not to layouts and typography, but to bank statements and online footprints. I became a digital detective, navigating the dark corners of the internet, learning about financial tracking, data recovery, online privacy, and how to circumvent it. It was a steep learning curve, fueled by adrenaline and a relentless desire for justice, my own twisted version of it. The investigation broadened. It wasn't just about the affair and the money anymore. It was about the clinic. Why was he using such a circuitous route for payments? Why not just transfer the money directly? Unless there was something else going on. Something that needed to be hidden even more carefully. I started looking into the clinic itself. Reviews were overwhelmingly positive, but that was easy to fake. I searched for news articles, lawsuits, regulatory filings. Nothing obvious surfaced initially. It was like hitting a wall. The emotional toll was immense. I felt like I was living a double life. During the day, I'd smile, make small talk, go through the motions of being a supportive wife. At night, I'd be hunched over my laptop, a cold cup of coffee beside me, my eyes burning, my heart a hollow ache in my chest. I lost weight. Friends commented that I looked tired, stressed. I'd brush it off, citing work pressure, family issues. The lies piled up, not just his, but mine too. I was becoming a mirror of his deception, learning to hide my true intentions, to wear a mask of normalcy. But my mask was a strategy for survival. His was a tool of cruelty. I started targeting her directly, in a way. Not confronting her, but analyzing her public life. Her posts were a chronicle of her transformation. Subtle changes at first, then more dramatic ones. Her followers gushed about her transformation, her glow-up, attributing it to diet and exercise. Only I knew the truth. The surgeries. The procedures. I also noticed something else. She would occasionally post about promoting the clinic, collaborations, special offers for her followers. She was an official ambassador, leveraging her natural beauty to attract clients. That felt
Wrong.
misleading at best. Potentially fraudulent if she was actively deceiving people about the source of her appearance. The turning point wasn't a sudden flash of insight, but a slow, grinding realization. This wasn't just a personal betrayal anymore. This was potentially something bigger, something that affected other people. If she was presenting surgical results as natural and promoting a clinic based on that lie, wasn't that fraud? And if Mark was funding it, was he complicit? The thought solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about getting even. This was about bringing down their carefully constructed world, exposing not just the infidelity, but the deceit that went beyond their relationship. I changed tactics. I stopped focusing solely on Mark and his finances. I started investigating the clinic through her. I looked for connections between her and the clinic owners, beyond the promotional deals. Were there financial ties? Was she receiving kickbacks beyond the visible sponsorships? I created burner accounts, posed as a prospective patient, asking pointed questions online, lurking in forums where former patients shared their experiences. I learned about the clinic's billing practices, the aggressive sales tactics, the pressure to undergo multiple procedures. And I started hearing whispers. Rumors of questionable billing, upcoding procedures, charging for services not rendered. Red flags started waving everywhere. One night, deep in a rabbit hole, I found it. A leaked document. It wasn't easy to access, buried deep in a dark corner of the web, shared anonymously by a disgruntled former employee. It was a price list, not the public one, an internal one, and it listed specific procedures, corresponding codes, and amounts billed to insurance companies or third-party medical finance companies. It was complex, filled with medical jargon I didn't understand. But the sheer scale of the listed prices was staggering. And there were notes, handwritten annotations, next to some entries. Patient X, multiple nose jobs billed separately. Patient Y, liposuction areas upcoded. Patient Z, phantom procedures added. It was a ledger of fraud. And some of the patient codes matched dates and procedures I'd cross-referenced with her social media posts and Mark's suspicious payments. She wasn't just getting surgery. She was potentially involved in systematic fraud, using her public image as a cover. My hands were shaking again, but this time not from fear. From a cold, exhilarating certainty. I had them, not just the affair. Something far more serious. Something that could bring down not just Mark's mistress, but potentially the clinic and anyone else involved. And Mark was undeniably involved. He funded her. He knew she was getting extensive surgeries. Even if he wasn't aware of the billing fraud details, he was tied to her and tied to the clinic through her. His carefully guarded secret wasn't just infidelity, it was complicity in something potentially criminal. I spent weeks meticulously cross-referencing the leaked document with public records, clinic promotional materials, archived versions of her social media posts, and Mark's financial records. I built a timeline, a network of connections, a case. It was painstaking, lonely work. Every late night felt like another brick laid in the foundation of my revenge. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. My world shrunk to the glowing screen and the dark corners of my mind. But I wasn't defeated anymore. I was focused. I was armed. The next step was the hardest. I couldn't go to the police myself, not directly. It would tie me to the investigation, potentially expose my methods, maybe even make me look complicit if the wrong questions were asked. I needed to be the anonymous source, the whisper in the right ear. I researched regulatory bodies, fraud divisions, investigative journalists who specialized in healthcare fraud. I crafted an anonymous package. No names, no identifying details about myself. Just the evidence. The leaked document, the financial trails, carefully anonymized, the links to her public profile showcasing the results while denying the means. I didn't name her or the clinic explicitly in the cover letter, just referred to them as entities involved in potentially fraudulent billing practices tied to cosmetic surgery and social media promotion. I made sure the package was untraceable. Mailed from a different city, paid for with cash, sent to a specific contact within a government regulatory agency known for investigating healthcare fraud. Then I waited. The waiting was agony. Every day felt like an eternity. I watched Mark, playing the part of the clueless wife, searching his face for any sign that his world was about to collapse. He seemed oblivious, perhaps feeling the danger had passed, that his secrets were safe. He was more relaxed, almost cocky. He'd hum under his breath, spend more time on his phone, smiling at texts I knew weren't for me. His comfort was a silent scream to my soul, a confirmation of how deeply he had underestimated me. How little he knew the woman he had pushed to the brink. Months passed. Life settled back into a semblance of normal, a fragile shell over the turbulent waters beneath. The investigation felt distant, a chapter closed, the package sent into the void. Had it been ignored? Had my carefully constructed evidence been dismissed? Doubt began to creep in, a cold tendril of fear that maybe I hadn't been smart enough, careful enough, that they would get away with it. And then, the first tremor. News articles began to appear, small at first, buried in the business section of local newspapers. Mentions of an ongoing investigation into a prominent aesthetic clinic for billing irregularities. The clinic wasn't named publicly yet, but the description was unmistakable. My heart leaped into my throat. It was working. The regulatory agency was looking into it. The tremors grew stronger. The articles became more frequent, moving to the front page. The clinic was named. Raids were conducted. Employees were questioned. The news spread like wildfire through local media and online forums. The perfect world of the clinic, the glossy facade of effortless beauty, was cracking under the weight of scrutiny. And then the Mistress. Her carefully curated online presence went silent. No new posts, no updates. Her followers started asking questions. Where did she go? Was she okay? I watched it all from a distance, a silent observer of the unfolding drama. The anger was still there, a low burn, but it was mixed now with a chilling sense of anticipation. The trap was set. The wire was tightening. And Mark was still oblivious, caught in the slow-motion collapse of his mistress's world, somehow not connecting the dots back to himself, to the money he'd poured into her transformation. The day the indictment came down felt strangely anticlimactic, yet earth-shattering. It arrived first as a breaking news alert on my phone. Social media influencer indicted for medical fraud. Her name was splashed across the screen, next to a mugshot that looked nothing like the carefully posed photos she shared online. The charges were extensive: conspiracy, wire fraud, healthcare fraud, money laundering. The details mirrored the evidence I had gathered, tied directly to her promotion of the clinic and the billing practices I had uncovered. The indictment named the clinic and several of its executives as co-conspirators, but she was the face of it, the one who had used her public platform to profit from the deceit. I was in the kitchen when the news broke. Mark was in the living room, watching TV. The air felt thick, charged with an unspoken tension I had orchestrated. I didn't say a word. I walked into the living room, phone in hand, and stood before him. He looked up, a casual smile on his face, asking about dinner. I didn't answer. I just held up my phone, the news article blazing on the screen, her mugshot staring back at him. His smile vanished. His eyes widened, darting from the screen to my face, searching for something he couldn't comprehend. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His face went pale, then ashen. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut, the wind knocked out of him. He knew. He knew instantly. The connection clicked in his mind, the sudden, horrifying realization that her downfall was tied to the money he had given her, the surgeries he had funded, the life he had built with her in secret. And that I knew. He started to tremble, not just his hands, but his whole body. He tried to speak again, a strangled sound escaping his lips.
What?
What is this? He stammered, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't offer comfort. I didn't offer explanations. I just held his gaze, letting him see the cold, quiet storm that had been gathering inside me for months, years maybe. I saw the carefully constructed facade of his life crumble in his eyes. The confident husband, the successful businessman, the charming liar. He was gone, replaced by a terrified man facing the consequences of his actions. He reached out a hand, tentatively, as if to touch the phone, to make the image disappear. I didn't flinch. I didn't move.
She
was indicted, he whispered, the words catching in his throat. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of disbelief, of dawning horror. For fraud, he looked at me, truly looked at me, maybe for the first time in a long time. He saw the lack of surprise, the quiet certainty in my eyes. He saw that this wasn't news to me.
How?
How did you know? He asked, his voice trembling. It was a desperate question, born of fear and confusion. He wasn't asking about the affair anymore. He was asking about the indictment, about the fraud, about how I knew something so deeply hidden, something that had just blindsided him completely. I lowered my phone slowly. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. I could hear the frantic beating of his heart, the shallow rasp of his breath.
He was cornered, exposed.
And I had done it. I hadn't just uncovered his betrayal, I had weaponized it. I had turned his infidelity into a legal nightmare for his mistress, a nightmare that was now inevitably going to spill over onto him. I didn't need to say anything. My silence, my steady gaze, My calm demeanor in the face of his unraveling was more powerful than any accusation. He saw the truth in my eyes. He saw that I knew about the money, about the surgeries, about the life he had built with her. And he saw that my knowing wasn't passive, it was active. It had led to this. He froze.
Completely.
Like a deer caught in headlights. The color drained from his face, leaving it stark and hollow. The man who had lied with such practiced ease, who had built a tower of deceit, was struck silent, unable to move, unable to deny, unable to escape the reality I had delivered. He remained frozen for what felt like an eternity. The TV droned on in the background, a stark contrast to the silent chaos in the room. His body was rigid, his eyes wide and unseeing. The betrayal, the lies, the secret life, it all came crashing down on him at once, delivered by the person he had so carelessly discarded. He wasn't just shocked by the indictment. He was shocked that I was the instrument of its arrival. That the quiet wife he had taken for granted had been watching, waiting, building her own world of retribution brick by painstaking brick. The silence was finally broken by a low groan, a sound of pure agony and defeat. He slumped back onto the couch, covering his face with his hands. The strong, controlled man was gone, replaced by a figure of abject despair. He knew his life, the one he had so carefully constructed on a foundation of lies, was over. The mistress was facing prison. The clinic was under investigation, and his financial ties to both would inevitably surface. His reputation, his career, his freedom, all were now in jeopardy. He had funded his mistress's transformation, and in doing so, he had funded his own destruction. I didn't feel triumphant. Not exactly. There was a cold satisfaction, a sense of vindication, but it was tempered by a deep sadness. The man on the couch was a stranger, yet he was also the man I had loved, the man I had built a life with. The years of betrayal had hollowed me out, leaving behind a space where love and trust used to be. Seeing him break didn't fill that space. It just highlighted its emptiness. The aftermath wasn't swift or clean. It was messy, protracted, filled with legal battles and the slow, painful dismantling of a life built on lies. The indictment of his mistress led to investigations that quickly uncovered the financial trails leading back to Mark. He wasn't charged as a co-conspirator in the fraud itself. My carefully crafted evidence had focused on her actions and the clinics, but his financial involvement, the large sums paid for non-essential procedures, raised serious questions. Questions that led to audits, investigations into his own business dealings, and ultimately, charges related to financial misconduct and tax evasion stemming from his attempts to hide the money he was funneling to his mistress and the clinic. His perfect life crumbled publicly. His name was dragged through the mud. The shame was immense. His mistress faced trial, the evidence against her overwhelming. Her curated online persona, the very thing he had invested in transforming, became evidence of her deception. She was convicted. Mark wasn't convicted of fraud, but the financial charges ruined him. He lost his job, his reputation, his social standing. The house, our house, was seized to pay for legal fees and settlements. The life we had built together, the life he had so carelessly jeopardized, was gone. I didn't stay for the complete collapse. Once the legal processes were underway, once I knew the consequences were inevitable, I started to rebuild my own life. Separate from his. I had held onto certain assets, things he hadn't known about or hadn't thought to hide. Enough to get by, to start fresh. The process of digging, of investigation, had changed me. I was stronger, more resourceful, less naive. The world felt sharper, less forgiving, but I also felt more capable of navigating its complexities. There were moments of reflection, quiet hours spent contemplating the ruins of my marriage, the years lost to his deceit. I didn't regret my actions. He had chosen his path, a path paved with lies and betrayal. I had simply cleared the brush, exposing the ground beneath. He had thought he was untouchable, using his money and his position to sculpt his mistress into his fantasy, never imagining that the very thing he was funding would be his undoing. The pain of the betrayal will probably never fully disappear. It's etched into the fabric of my life, a scar that serves as a reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of deceit. But the fear is gone. The powerlessness is gone. I faced the darkness he created and found my own strength within it. I didn't just survive. I transformed my own fate, not through surgery or external alteration, but through resilience, cunning, and the quiet, unwavering pursuit of truth. His secret didn't just pay for a new face for his mistress, it inadvertently funded my own liberation. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version in the comments. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.